Hey there, hi there, ho there. Good morning, everybody, and happy beginning to your week, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to the Drones at Dawn podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host, and thank you again, Interdrone, for creating this podcast and giving us this opportunity to engage with everybody. So, by the way, it's live, right? So get in the chat, ask your questions, make your comments, give us positive encouragement. We absolutely love that. So this is the end. We are rounding out our safety and security month, and there's no better person to do that with when you're talking about safety than Major General Retired United States Air Force, Fred Roggero. So Fred is the CEO of Resilient Solutions Ltd. And when he retired from the United States Air Force as a two-star general, he was chief of the Air Force Safety Office and the entire program for the entire department. So welcome and good morning, Fred. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Good morning, Don, and thank you very much for having me on, and thanks very much for Interdrone for their support as well.
Fred, I know you would agree with this, obviously, given you've built your entire business model around safety. There's really nothing more important to talk about in the drone industry than safety, because this is why we have regulations, right? It's really the keystone of all of aviation, but particularly in unmanned aircraft. So can you tell us a little bit about your background before we jump into the safety specifics?
Well, sure. Thanks, Don, very much for that. Appreciate that. Well, yes, I did about 32 years in the Air Force, and as you said, finished up as the Chief of Safety for the Air Force. So that was aviation, ground, space, all aspects of safety. So the unmanned business is growing, and to get it out there and to get more buy-in by the public on the capability of drones, I think one of the first steps that we've got to do as an industry is really build that safety culture as we're building this new chapter of aviation. And you can do that very easily through safety. And by the way, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, that having a safe program also means that it's going to be a more profitable program as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Safety first. And I know we'll get into a little bit later, maybe even deviate from the script about mishaps. Fun fact, when I worked at Air Combat Command for the Air Force, I was one of the people that, as one of the lawyers that reviewed all the safety accident and aircraft accident investigations. And boy, learned a lot about unmanned aircraft and some of the issues there. So great, I think, transition to talk a little bit about, Fred, about what Resilience Solutions does for the drone industry in the arena of safety.
Right. Well, we've reached out. We've got veteran aviators that have joined Resilient Solutions and want to still participate in that, in the aviation community. And we thought the best way to do that was through safety. So we do a whole myriad of things for companies, to include startups and Fortune 500 companies that when they start up a drone program, takes them a little while before it clicks that they're actually starting up an aviation program. And there's a lot of responsibility and accountability that goes with that. So many of them understand the importance of baking in that culture right from the start. So we'll go in and we'll take a look and do a gap analysis, if you will, and take a look and see what they've already designed, if anything. Some companies come with absolutely nothing, just an awareness of it, that they have a need for developing, safety processes and a safety culture. And we'll do that gap analysis and show them where they need to go and leave them with a list of, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 30 things that they need to do to get started. And then they can pick and choose from that list and see if there's anything else that they would like Resilient Solutions in our background, because we've had government contracts with the Air Force, so we've managed the safety for their Unmanned Aviation Safety Program out at the Safety Center at Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico. But we'll take that and then we'll start to build the components that they need. If they need a safety management system program, a model, or if they need tools or trackers to do that, or if they've been in business for a couple of years, we want to see how they're doing and they need an audit to go back and review and to do that safety assurance piece that's in a safety management system, then we can do that as well. So it's a sort of a soup to nuts, if you will.
Well, so much to dig into there, Fred. So let's back up for one second. So what exactly is the mission of Resilient Solutions Ltd?
Well, you know, mission is important, profitability is important, but at the end of the day, if you don't take care of your people, you're not going to be very good, a very good business. So safety is one of those things that looks after the profitability, but more importantly, it looks after the people. You want to make sure that nobody gets hurt. You don't want to be damaging your equipment and costing you more money and ruining your brand reputation right in front of the clients in many cases. So our mission is to make sure that you have your business has the tools and techniques required to basically look after your people who are going to look after and execute your mission for you.
You know, you were on one of the panels for Interdrone last year in December when we were online, and that was with the Unmanned Aircraft Safety Team. We're going to jump into that here in a second.
Sure.
But I just want to highlight something, you know, for those that want to go back and look at some of those videos. Of course, Fred and his team had an amazing panel. There was another panel that talked about starting up your business, and there was a lawyer, a venture capitalist. Trying to think of who else was on there. Great stuff. Kind of going through the checklist of Frank Coppersmith. You know, he's an entrepreneur. Just practical tips. Well, as Fred just mentioned, for everybody out there, whether you're just starting your business or you have one, on that checklist, if you don't have some kind of a safety policy, a safety plan, a safety program, and a way to continuously train and evaluate that program, you're missing out. So let's jump into this idea of safety management systems, Fred. Can you define that term? Because we hear that thrown around a lot. And I think sometimes people, you know, words matter. So what does that mean exactly?
Right. And safety, you're exactly correct on. Safety management systems can mean many different things to many different people. So it's always important to go back and say, exactly what are you talking about when you talk about SMS or safety management system? So I like to tell people that ask, their potential clients, well, is this a big notebook? What do I do? And safety management system is simply the way that your company, if you are your company, in many cases we're talking to, single operators, it's whatever you do to identify and then mitigate risk and capture the results. It's a policy and it's a structure. Safety management system also says who's in charge, who's the accountable executive. When things go well, who do we praise? When things don't go well, who's the accountable individual that made that decision? So it's a collection of things. ICAO will tell you that there's 4 pillars to safety management system, 4 parts. The first one is
I was going to say, take out your notepads now, because this is the good stuff. Your 4 pillars. Go ahead, Fred.
Okay, yeah, there's 4.
4.
So I learned that in the air. Anyways, the first one is policy. So it's to write down from a policy aspect, who is the accountable executive? That's important, because who's the person that has the resources that can put in the risk mitigations, that can afford to do that? Do they need to hire another person, or do they need to accept that risk as a company? And to be frank, many startups do. Many startups have to accept a lot of risk. But what's important is that they understand what risk it is that they are assuming. If you don't have a system that goes through that to identify that, you might be flying in the blind and you wouldn't have any idea what's going on in the actual field of execution while your employees are doing that, and putting your company at risk in terms of workman's compensation, damage claims, medical claims, you name it, from a legal aspect, unless you have something that is actively, continually searching for risks. So to get back to SMS, that first pillar is policy. What's written down? What are you saying that you're going to do? And believe it or not, if you have no policy, you actually still have a safety management system, but it's not a very good one. If your system is, I'm not going to do anything, got it, have fun explaining it to the FAA.
I
But
love that, Fred. I just want to jump in for a second. I was talking to my
sure.
son about something the other day, and he made a comment about I'm not going to decide, and I quoted, 80s rock band Rush. If you right, if you choose to
Yeah,
decide, you still have. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
exactly.
And exactly to your point, I mean, if you choose not to have a safety policy, that's your policy, and that's not a good one. Agree.
That's exactly right. So moving on from policy, then you get into the SRM, or the safety risk management. So what safety risk management is that you take a look at your business in depth. Say just for grins, it's a roofing inspection. So you're a one person operator, and you've identified that this is what I'm going to do every day. I'm going to take the drone. I'm going to go here. I'm going to set it up. I'm going to do a pre-flight. I'm going to check the weather. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to fly around, and then I'm going to land, and I'm going to give the data to the client. Got it. That's my system. So then you take a look at that and you do a little analysis and say, well, where are the risks in that system? Where are the hazards? What can go wrong? And then things like, well, there's air traffic, controlled airspace issues. There might be privacy issues in a neighborhood. You could do damage to something. There might be trees in the way. So you build all these potential hazards around, and you identify them so you know where they're at, and you know what to look for, and you probably establish a checklist of those over time. So in that same analysis, you start to build in risk mitigation. So what can I do to avoid those hazards? I can talk to the neighbors, tell them that I'm going to be doing this, so there's no privacy issues. I know the tree is there, so I'm going to concentrate my flying on this side. Just all kinds of little basic things, but you can identify that, make a list, so that when you go to the next job, you've got something to start with, and you know the general hazards to your operation. Of course, if you're Fortune 500 and you're in 36 countries around the world, now it goes back to, you really have to have this in policy and communicate it to everybody into the business. The third leg is the safety assurance piece. So you've got the policy, you've identified the hazards. Now in safety assurance, you actually have to go back and to make sure that those mitigations are working. So this is where audits come in play. If you've said you're going to do something in the safety part, and this is one of the biggest errors that we actually find with companies, if you say you're going to do it in policy, the audit should pick up that, yes, you've done it, and these are the results of that policy that you've done. Maybe it's accident investigation, lessons learned. Have you really recaptured those? Have you taken those and put those back into your training program so you can train out the issues that you've seen in the risk area? So that safety assurance should give you some type of reassurance, if you will, that everything that you've designed up to that point is working. If it's not working, that's where a lot of people talk about SMS and say it's a continuous improvement process. And it is. It really is sort of never ending, because if you discover that there were things, maybe there's a new risk out there that you didn't even know, but it came out in a hazard report from one of your employees, or maybe it came out as a lesson learned in an investigation that you did, or you did another safety analysis because you won a new contract and there's a new type of work, and now you're not just doing roofs, but maybe you're delivering things. So you have a lot more new risk. So you've got to put that back through the process, go back and do another analysis back in the safety risk management section, and come up with new mitigations to move forward from there. So that's your safety assurance. It makes sure that you understand that your safety management system is working. The last piece is called promotion, or the fourth pillar is promotion. Promotion is nothing more than communication. And when I was the chief of safety, I get interviewed all the time and have to, go around and chat to folks about safety, and their eyes kind of glaze over if you show up with, a pocket protector and earmuffs and a bright yellow safety vest. It's kind of, okay, that's a message that it's all about compliance. When really safety management system is anything but all about compliance, and I can get into that a little bit more. Safety is really about communication from the top to the very last person that walks through the door of your company in the morning. The communication has got to be the same. If everybody doesn't understand what the safety goals and objectives of your company are, then you're really not doing a very good job in promotion. If people aren't hearing the same results that the CEO is hearing about the effectiveness of what their safety program is, that's not good communication either. So one of the things that we do at Resilient Solutions for a company, if we're going around and giving that company a good look, is that we'll do a survey and go out to everybody in the company that we can reach and ask them just some basic questions. Because if you ask the CEO, how's safety in your company? You know, the number one answer is, it's great. And the follow-up question then is, well, how do you know? And so when you start doing this communication and asking for feedback from everybody in your company, you discover how things are really going. And if the upper management is willing to listen and to take action on some of those things, you can be a lot more profitable company, to be honest, because number one, the first and most important thing, remember when I said your people, taking care of your people are really the most important part of the business. And if you ask them about safety, you as the leadership are actually reaching out and saying, I'm taking care of you. You are my number one priority. If you don't look after their safety, they're not going to believe you when you say you're the most important part of my company. So you've got to do that. And that promotion is that piece about communicating and looking for feedback. And it's not only communicating to your employees, but you have investors, perhaps, if you're a startup, that you need to communicate to on your safety culture and what you're doing and how it's going. Good or bad, it doesn't matter. The value is in the communication here in this piece. And you have to communicate to new clients and your current clients too, if you want to retain their business. And once in a while, that communication and that promotion is important too, if you're going back to the regulator because you need a waiver for a special project that you want to do. Having a good reputation, and that's part of that communication and promotion of your safety culture that will get you that recognition and preserve that brand that you have. So there you go. There's your 4 pillars of safety management systems.
I love that. It's great, easy to remember because it's 4 pillars. And, you know, really what you're talking about, you're speaking, of course, like a proven, Air Force leader, because, you know, you're talking about communication, and that's at the end of the day, what leadership is all about, especially if you have people working for you, not just keeping them safe, but knowing, you know, communicating with them and letting them know this is how things are going, or getting that feedback. So many times we don't do that. And absolutely right. Safety, just like so many other things in business and in life, you don't plant a flag and say mission accomplished. It's a constant process. And so on the note of promotion, that's probably a great segue to talk for a second about the UAST and exactly what that is. Can you explain to the group out there what UAST is?
Sure. The Unmanned Safety Aircraft the Unmanned Aircraft Safety Team, UAST.org, by the way. If you just do UAST, I think you'll probably get the Ukrainian American Society or something. But so it's got to be the whole thing, if you like. And as you can see out here in this great state of Washington, the sun is just coming up here. But it's a public-private sort of group that has started up. It's co-chaired by the FAA and industry, and it started up in the same way that the Commercial Aviation Safety Team, which has won vast numbers of trophies, including the Collier Trophy, because it pulls together all aspects of the group that's concerned about aviation safety. The Commercial Aviation Safety is usually chaired by one of the airlines and the FAA. The UAST is part of that. There's also a General Aviation Joint Safety Group that's out there, and they really are concerned about the safety of the entire industry and ecosystem. So they kind of, check their baggage at the door and come in to work on this greater good. And there's associations involved, there's manufacturers involved, of course the government's involved, and so are operators. So all those lessons learned and that data is meant to roll into this organization, which then takes a look at, and it's all volunteer. You take a look at that data, and then start putting it into sort of hazard classifications, if you will, and then trying to work up solutions and use everybody's experience so that you can come up to these conclusions that are really safety enhancements. So it's very difficult right now because the commercial aviation has been around for 70 years, so there's plenty of data and lots of maturity in that regard. In the drone safety aspect, just the culture of our industry has brought together numerous parts. You have experienced aviators, you have engineers who haven't ever set foot except in the back of a commercial airliner in aviation, and you're trying to pull all this together and bring what aviation has already developed over this 70 plus years, so that we're not losing those lessons learned, but incorporating the right ones, the ones that are applicable. Some don't apply, but to pull in those right ones, and then to be able to take that data and to come up with safety enhancements. So I'll just give you an example. One of the ones that we worked on, and I encourage everybody on the call, if you want to take a look at it, go to that website, the Unmanned Aircraft Safety Team.org, and look up SMS, because I worked on a panel with folks from Wing and Amazon and Kitty Hawk and many others. And we developed a sort of, I don't want to call it an SMS for dummies because it's not. But what it says is, don't be scared of SMS. Don't be scared of a safety management system. Look at it from this aspect. If you're a sole, one-person company, and your operations, you have a Part 107, and you don't really, you're not requiring any waivers to do a majority of your flights, then your safety management system sort of needs to have these components. And there's a list of components on that site that go through, and they're pretty simple, but you can look at that and you can say, yes, that's an SMS. I have an SMS. So when I go to apply for a waiver, to the FAA, which you don't have to do that much now that they've changed the rules here, just started the ops over people in the nighttime rule. I think the nighttime waiver was the most requested waiver, but in any case, if you don't have to use those waivers, then your safety management system can be fairly simple. If there's more risk involved, perhaps you have more employees, more flight operation locations that you're doing on a daily basis, you have more hazards, then you're going to need a few more things and do something else, like keep a written record of hazards and your investigations and your accidents and things like that. And then if you're, into that delivery phase and you move over and you're part of the Wing or the Amazon piece, and you're more like a Part 135 operator, then yes, all of that stuff that you see in like AC 120-92B, that's all going to pretty much apply to you. So there is some great guidance out there. It's available for free. So take a look at that. And that's one of the things that the UAST did by acknowledging the fact that, there's not sort of a standard safety culture out there in the drone aviation world yet. So we've got to speed that process up a little bit. Let's let everybody know what a safety culture could look like. So that was part of the thinking there.
I was just going to say, Fred, I definitely encourage people to go to the UAST website, check it out. As Fred said, absolutely free. One of the things, Fred, you mentioned earlier was this idea of ongoing training, right? Never planting the flag, training, evaluation. And, there's lots of different training programs out there. You don't have to make up your own. And one of them you might consider, just shameless plug for a group that I'm affiliated with, because I think they're doing amazing things, the Unmanned Safety Institute. Check out their website and see what they're producing and how it could plug into your company, especially if you have a larger company that is in this space, and then you don't have to create the content because it's already there, and they have certifications as well. It was a great segue though, Fred, because the UAST website, it's a great resource. It's full of best practices. What are some other best practices that you've seen in this arena for safety?
Well, yeah, well, one of them is, and we sort of covered it already, is if you write it down and you say it's your policy, it's your company's policy, then do it. One of the worst things you can do is say you're going to do something and then not do it. But if you establish this process, your safety processes first, and you get those baked in early, even if you're a startup and you've got 3-5 people working on the project to develop something that you hope is going to be have 150 locations and operating out of there, that's great. The earlier though that you bake in your safety culture and what you want to achieve through that safety culture as far as a business goes, the easier it is. It's very hard for a company, and I've seen this in a couple of areas where a company has stood up and then they've been merged with another company who perhaps has been in business a little bit longer, and they come with a different safety culture. And then there's another group that comes in. So now you start building, but in the safety culture of the company is defined by location, not by the corporate headquarters, which it can be really bad, because then the CEO of the company at the corporate headquarters is only going to see one dimension of the safety and miss out on exactly what's happening out there in the field. So by establishing a strong culture to start with and then pushing that throughout the company continuously, that is one of the best practices and makes the ease of growth on the safety and the reduction of mishaps happen.
Well, that's also then a good segue to talk for a second about mishaps. I know as the Chief of Air Force Safety, you had your eyes on, unfortunately, many reports from ground accident mishaps in a contingency area, a combat zone overseas, to unmanned aircraft accidents right here in the United States. Most people don't realize that Part 107 actually has a mishap reporting requirement. And if you go to Advisory Circular 107-2A, it elaborates on that a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about that, because it's somewhat voluntary, right? And so you mentioned, Fred, with the UAST that there's not a lot of data coming in, to make those evaluations as to what needs to be fixed. What are some of the best practices to prevent those kind of accidents? What would you say about mishap reporting and the importance of it, and what you'd like to see?
Well, certainly, if you're an operator with the Part 107 and you've got a business doing this, and you have a mishap and it meets the requirements for submitting a report, you have to submit that report, because sooner or later, in today's world of technology, somebody's going to know about that accident, and one day you're going to go to the regulator, even if they don't come to you first, and you're going to ask for something. There will be a look, and they'll see this spot there. So if you have to report it, go ahead and report it, because the FAA pretty much they want to learn lessons as much as we do. And the sooner that everybody learns these lessons, the quicker this industry will continue to develop. One thing that we as drone operators don't have, that manned aviation operators do have, is that there is a protective reporting system for manned operators. So if I'm in my aircraft and I take off, and the controller gives me, climb to flight, to 10,000 feet, and I go zooming through 10,000 feet, maybe up to 10,500 or so, and there's nobody around, nobody sees me, and I realize my mistake, and I push a nose over and come back down to 10,000 feet. It's in my interest that as soon as possible, I might even do it shortly, I mean, very shortly after returning, is to write that up, and it goes into ASRS. And I apologize, I've just forgotten the acronym, but it's a NASA system. So the report goes in there, and it's basically it's not exactly a get out of jail free card, but it's sort of like that. In that, if I didn't do it on purpose, like Yahoo, I'm going to ignore the controller, I'm going right through 10, I don't care, I'm going to be negligent, and I'm going to do this on purpose, okay, I'm going to get in trouble for that one. But if I did it just because perhaps there was a radio call, I was talking to the co-pilot, or I was distracted in some other way, and I went through my altitude, that's an important data lesson. And the FAA would love to collect those, and NASA does collect those, because then they can do their own safety risk management and start to analyze their systems and see why are we getting so many pilots distracted at this point of flight? What are we doing anything? So they can go back and analyze that system. So and when the pilot reports that first, then they are protected. And you won't have your license, your wings taken away because you made that one error. Unfortunately, Part 107 pilots don't enjoy that same privilege yet, and it's not intentional. It's only because it hasn't gone through the rules system. And the FAA is very much aware of this. We talk about this a lot in the UAST, that if we want to get data, there's got to be something of a just culture out there widely. Just culture is where you don't get penalized by the boss for bringing bad news to the boss, as long as it wasn't intentional, or that's exactly you wanted to break the rules. But soon that's coming. So I encourage the listeners and everyone to keep an ear out for that, because that will happen. The FAA realizes how important that is, and it's coming.
Just culture, and Scott Schofman's out there. Hey, Scott, coming in from Texas. Great to see you again. Love that you dialing in every week. Is mentioning that it's a concept that most operators are just not familiar with, and they really need to understand it. So thank you so much, Fred, for bringing up this concept of just culture, and hopefully it will apply soon, because as an attorney, I totally agree with you. It's what we call in the law privilege. Right. And privilege meaning, if I come forward, that is going to be protected, and society wants to protect that, because there are many privileges in the law, right? Or attorney-client privilege, penitent, the priest privilege. And in the Air Force, we have the safety privilege that you just kind of alluded to, Fred, this idea that if you come forward first and you say, this is what happened, or there's a safety investigation, we don't release that information publicly. Right. People willingly submit the drug tests, and if there's a bad tox screen, that's not going on the news. So very, very important stuff there. And we're running a little bit short on time. And so let's see, where can people, other than, of course, Resilient Solutions website, Fred, and UAST.org, are there other resources that you would recommend people refer to learn more about safety, about just culture, about these 4 pillars, or other information that will help them keep their operations safe?
Well, yeah, there are lots of areas. Transport Canada has got some great programs. It doesn't align exactly with the FAA, but very close. And they just go into Transport Canada Unmanned Systems, and you'll see a plethora of information. It's even written in French too, if you like. But and of course the FAA side has got plenty of SMS information that goes right into the ICAO as well. So those are some good areas. And there are companies, as you mentioned, Unmanned Safety Institute, very familiar with them as well, and they have SMS courses. MITRE, University of Southern California, also have SMS courses. But if you keep in mind just that your goal is you want to be profitable if you're a company. And to be profitable, got to take care of the people so they can take care of the mission. And you're not destroying aircraft, you're not hurting people, you're not hurting your clients. All of that leads to building a good brand and recommendations, and your business will grow. But don't pay attention to it. Don't listen to your people, and then you'll suffer the consequences, because you'll never understand the risk that your company is taking on your behalf if they won't talk to you because they're afraid that they're going to get pounded for it. In other words, the anti-just culture, if you will. So you have to be willing to listen. But lots of sources. There are a lot of sources on safety management systems.
The theme of today's show is flying blind is not the way to go.
That's it.
So absolutely. So, and you mentioned Transport Canada, which is actually probably also a great segue into some upcoming things we have going on here. So next week's, and you'll see the advertisement here in a second. Join us next week. First of all, we're kicking off the month of May. It will be a global drone regulation theme. And we are starting with Canada. So you're going to hear from Glenn Lynch from Volatus Aerospace. That company is the largest drone service provider, amongst other things, in Canada. And they are very lashed up with Transport Canada and creating the regulations, including a beyond visual line of sight regulation. They expect to come out, at least an initial one, before the end of this year, which is amazing. And for everybody that is on Clubhouse, or if you're not and you have an iPhone, please join. And join us this Thursday for the first time. We are kicking off 11 a.m. Mountain, the Drone Law Connections Club. And we are going to have a special Canadian guest, and hopefully many Canadian folks that we can bring up to the stage and learn, as Fred just said, what's the safety culture in Canada? Do they have a just culture? Do they, what else are they doing out there? How's beyond visual line of sight going? So join us Thursday on Clubhouse. Join us next Monday here. And of course, you can always come back to InterDrone's Launchpad. Watch this video again. If you didn't get the 4 pillars the first time, go back and listen. Great stuff here. You can also join my Patreon community, and I encourage you to do so. I'm posting up ad-free content, bonus footage, the wisdom of guests like Fred, and my Deliberations by Dawn blog a couple times a week. So would love to have you join that community. Fred, we got maybe 2 minutes to go. 30-second elevator speech. What do you want to close with here?
Well, look, if we want to work together and get this drone industry, off the dime and really working out there, it's been a very slow process so far. One of the key things that we've got to do is get the public engaged, prove to them that we're a trustworthy group in how we operate, and that we operate just like the airlines do, which they barely even see because the airline industry is so safe. We in the drone industry want to get to that same point where everybody sort of takes us for granted because we operate safely and can make their lives easier, and it's a profitable industry for us. But if we don't win that confidence in the public, we'll never get to that point, or it's going to be so delayed that we'll be out of business before we can wait that long. So let's get with it. Let's operate responsibly, maturity, and fly safe. And this will be the next really big chapter in aviation, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much. And, to close, one amazing resource, of course, is InterDrone, not just their launch pad, but please join us 10 to 12 August live in Dallas, Texas for the InterDrone Expo and conference event. We are so looking forward to seeing everybody there. I can't wait to meet Scott and so many of you all in person. Finally. So anyway, I think that's a wrap for today. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Canadian Drones, maybe on Clubhouse Thursday out here.